"You're in the wrong line. People like you don't fly first class." That was the sentence that ended Tiffany's career, though she didn't know it yet. She stood blocking the jet bridge of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, sneering at an elderly black couple dressed in comfortable tracksuits. She thought she was protecting the airline's image. She thought she was untouchable. She had no idea that the man she was threatening to have arrested didn't just hold a ticket. He held the deed to the entire company. What happens when arrogance meets the ultimate power move? You won't believe how hard the karma hits. The fluorescent lights of JFK's Terminal 4 hummed with the chaotic energy of the holiday rush. It was a sea of frantic travelers, screaming toddlers, and the incessant clatter of suitcase wheels against the terrazzo floor. But at Gate 42, the atmosphere was different. This was the exclusive boarding area for Regal Horizon Airlines, a carrier that prided itself on providing the gold standard of the skies. Tiffany Miller stood at the podium, smoothing the lapels of her navy blue blazer. Her hair was pulled back into a bun so tight it pulled at the corners of her eyes, giving her a permanent look of skepticism. She wasn't just a gate agent or a senior flight attendant. In her mind, she was the guardian of luxury. She had spent 5 years climbing the ladder at Regal Horizon, and she took her job of curating the passenger experience aggressively seriously. To Tiffany, curating meant keeping out the riffraff. Boarding for Flight 808 to London. Heathrow will commence shortly for our Diamond and First Class passengers, Tiffany announced into the microphone, her voice dripping with practiced sweetness that vanished the moment she let go of the button. She scanned the line of passengers forming behind the velvet rope. It was the usual crowd, men in bespoke Italian suits from Zegna, women clutching Hermes Birkin bags, and a few tech moguls in hoodies that probably cost more than Tiffany's car. She nodded approvingly. This was the aesthetic. This was the brand. Then she saw them. Shuffling toward the first-class priority lane was an elderly black couple. The man, who looked to be in his late 70s, walked with a slight limp, leaning on a cane with a worn wooden handle. He wore a faded grey tracksuit that looked like it had been purchased at a discount store in 1995, and a newsboy cap pulled low. Beside him, his wife wore a floral house dress and a knitted cardigan that had seen better days, clutching a plastic shopping bag instead of a purse. Tiffany's lip curled. It wasn't just that they looked poor. To her, they looked lost. They looked like they belonged on a Greyhound bus, not on her flagship flight. As the couple reached the podium, the man offered a warm, crinkled smile. "Good morning, young lady," he said, his voice raspy but kind. He reached into his pocket to retrieve their boarding passes. Tiffany didn't smile back. She didn't even look at his hand. She looked past him, addressing the businessman behind them. "Sir, if you could just wait a moment while I redirect these passengers." She then dropped her gaze to the elderly couple, her voice dropping an octave, losing all its customer service warmth. "Excuse me, you're in the wrong line. Economy boarding is at the rear gate, or you can wait until Group 5 is called. This lane is for first class only." The man, whose name was Otis, blinked, confused. "We know, miss. We have tickets for—" "I'm sure you have tickets," Tiffany interrupted, crossing her arms over her chest. "But I don't have time to sort out confused passengers who can't read the signage. Please step aside so the actual first-class passengers can board. You are blocking the flow." Otis's wife, Martha, gently touched her husband's arm. She looked tired, her eyes glassy with exhaustion. "Otis, honey, just show her the paper." "I'm trying, Martha," Otis said patiently. He held out the printed boarding passes again. "Miss, if you would just scan these, you'll see we are in seats 1A and 1B. Tiffany actually laughed. It was a short, sharp sound like a bark. 1A and 1B, Those are the owner suites. They cost $12,000 one way. She looked them up and down, making a show of inspecting their worn-out sneakers. Look, I'm going to ask you once nicely. Move! You are embarrassing yourselves, and you are annoying my high-value customers. Behind them, the businessman in the suit checked his Rolex. A submariner, Tiffany noted, and sighed loudly. Come on, let's go. Some of us have meetings. You hear that? Tiffany snapped at Otis. Move, now! Otis didn't budge. The warmth faded from his eyes, replaced by a steeliness that Tiffany was too arrogant to recognize as authority. He stood up a little straighter, ignoring the pain in his hip. I am not moving, Otis said, his voice quiet but carrying a strange resonance over the noise of the terminal. I paid for these seats. I am boarding this plane. Tiffany's face flushed red. She wasn't used to being defied, certainly not by people who looked like they clipped coupons for cat food. She signaled to a security guard standing near the food court. Oh, you want to play it that way? Tiffany hissed, leaning over the podium. Fine. You want to cause a scene? I'll have you banned from the airline. Security. The security guard, a burly man named Dave, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, lumbered over. He knew Tiffany. Everyone who worked Terminal 4 knew Tiffany. She was notorious for flagging suspicious passengers who usually turned out to be nothing more than tired travelers she didn't like the look of. Problem, Tiffany? Dave asked, hooking his thumbs into his belt. Yes, Dave. These two represent a security threat. Tiffany lied smoothly, her voice pitching up to sound like a victim. They are refusing to follow crew member instructions, blocking the boarding area, and claiming to hold tickets that obviously don't belong to them. I suspect fraud. Or maybe they stole them. Martha gasped, clutching her plastic bag to her chest. Stole them? Young lady, we have never stolen a thing in our lives. We've been married 52 years and— I don't care about your anniversary, Tiffany spat. Dave, escort them out. They aren't flying today. Dave looked at the elderly couple. He saw two fragile seniors who looked terrified and humiliated. He hesitated. Tiff, maybe just check the scanner. If the machine says yes, they fly. It's protocol. Tiffany slammed her hand on the counter. I am the lead gate agent, Dave. My protocol is discretion, and I am using it. Look at them. Do they look like they belong in a cabin with CEOs and diplomats? If I let them on and they smell, or they make a scene, or they don't know how to use the amenities, I get the complaint letter. I am protecting the integrity of Regal Horizon. By now, a crowd had gathered. People in the economy seating area were standing up, filming with their phones. The high-value passengers in the first-class line were divided. Some looked uncomfortable with Tiffany's aggression, but others, infected by the mob mentality, started muttering. Just move them, one woman in a fur coat shouted. It smells like old mothballs already. Otis turned to look at the woman, then back to Tiffany. He slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out not just the boarding pass, but a black leather wallet. He didn't open it to show ID. He simply held it. You are making a mistake, Otis said. A very expensive mistake. Is that a threat? Tiffany shrieked. She looked at the crowd playing to the audience. Did you hear that? He threatened me. Dave, grab him! Dave stepped forward, looking apologetic. Sir, you have to come with me. You can't threaten airline staff. I didn't threaten her safety, Otis said calmly. I threatened her employment. Tiffany cackled. My employment? You? You probably don't even have a job. You look like you sleep on a park bench. I make 6 figures, old man. I run this gate. I am Regal Horizon at this airport. You are nobody. She grabbed the boarding passes from Otis's hand, not to scan them, but to rip them. She held the cardstock in both hands, ready to tear them down the middle. You aren't flying. Not in first. Not in economy. You're walking. Don't do it. A deep voice boomed from the jet bridge doorway. Everyone froze. Standing there was Captain Richard Sterling, the senior pilot for the flight. He was a silver-haired veteran of the skies, a man who commanded respect. He had heard the commotion and come up to check. Tiffany smiled, thinking backup had arrived. "Captain Sterling, thank goodness. These squatters are refusing to leave." Captain Sterling looked at Tiffany. Then he looked at Otis. His eyes went wide. The color drained from his face instantly, leaving him pale beneath his tan. He didn't look at Otis with annoyance. He looked at him with sheer, unadulterated panic. Sterling rushed forward, bypassing Tiffany completely. Sir, I am so sorry. I didn't know you were... we weren't expecting..." Tiffany blinked, confused. "Captain, what are you doing? Don't talk to him. He's a security risk." Sterling spun around, his face furious. "Quiet, Tiffany." He turned back to Otis, lowering his voice, sweating visibly. "Mr. Washington, please, let me escort you on board personally. I can have the steward bring you some champagne immediately. There's no need for this." Otis looked at the captain, then back at Tiffany, who was standing with her mouth open, still holding the boarding passes she had been about to rip. "No, Captain," Otis said slowly. "I don't think I want champagne just yet. I think I want to clarify something with this young lady. She seems to think my wife and I aren't brand appropriate." Tiffany's stomach dropped. She looked at the captain's terrified face, then at the old man's calm demeanor. The pieces weren't fitting together. Who was this guy? "Tiffany," Captain Sterling hissed, his voice trembling. "Do you know who this is?" "Some scammer?" she whispered, her voice wavering for the first time. "This is Otis Washington," Sterling said, the name landing heavy in the air. "The founder of Washington Holdings." Tiffany frowned. "So? A holding company?" "Washington Holdings," Sterling continued, "which is the parent company of the venture capital firm that bought Regal Horizon Airlines 3 days ago." The silence that fell over Gate 42 was absolute. Even the crying babies seemed to stop. Otis smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That's right. As of Tuesday morning, I don't just have a ticket, young lady. I own the plane. I own the gate. I own that uniform you're wearing." Tiffany felt the blood rush from her head. She gripped the podium to stop from fainting. "And," Otis continued, taking a step closer to her, "I decided to fly commercial today with my wife to see how my new investment treats its customers. I wanted to see the gold standard you advertise." He gestured to his tracksuit. "I dressed down to see how you treat the people you think don't matter." He leaned in close. "And Tiffany, you are failing." The silence at Gate 42 was heavy, a physical weight pressing down on everyone. But Tiffany Miller's mind refused to accept the reality of what Captain Sterling had just said. Her brain was frantically rewriting the script, desperate to preserve her worldview, where she was the queen, and the man in the tracksuit was the peasant. "He's lying!" Tiffany blurted out, her voice shrill and trembling. She pointed a manicured finger at Captain Sterling. "You know him? From where? Is he your uncle? Your old drinking buddy? This is a setup." She turned to the crowd, her eyes wide and frantic. "Everyone, listen. This is a scam. This man is trying to hijack the boarding process with some fake story. There is no Otis Washington on the manifest. I checked." "I'm not on the manifest under Washington," Otis said calmly, his voice cutting through her hysteria. "I'm on the manifest under W Holdings corporate account 001. You didn't check the code attached to the seat assignment, did you, Tiffany? You just saw a face you didn't like and stopped looking." Tiffany scoffed, though her hands were shaking violently now. "Corporate account 01. Please, that code is for the board of directors. You expect me to believe you're on the board? Look at your shoes. They're Velcro." "They're orthopedic," Martha spoke up softly, clutching Otis's arm. "His arthritis acts up in the cold." "I don't care about his arthritis," Tiffany screamed. She was spiraling now, losing the professional veneer entirely. "I care about my gait. Captain Sterling, get back in the cockpit. Dave, drag these people out of here before I call the police and have you arrested for aiding a disturbance." Dave, the security guard, took a large step back. He raised his hands. "I'm not touching him, Tiff. If the captain says he's the boss, I'm believing the captain." "Fine." Tiffany grabbed the phone on her podium, her fingers mashing the buttons. "I'm calling the station manager. I'm calling Gavin Ridley. He'll sort this out. He hates freeloaders more than I do." Otis just watched her, his expression unreadable. "Call him," he said. "I've been meaning to meet Mr. Ridley. I've seen the quarterly reports on customer satisfaction at JFK. They are concerning." Minutes passed like hours. The line of passengers was growing restless, but nobody moved. The drama was too good. Phones were recording from every angle. The businessman with the Rolex had stopped checking the time and was now live streaming on Instagram. Then the crowd parted. Striding down the concourse was Gavin Ridley, the station manager for Regal Horizon at JFK. Ridley was a man who wore his authority like a weapon. He was dressed in a suit that was too tight, with a headset around his neck and a tablet in his hand. He had the energy of a man who was constantly annoyed by the existence of other human beings. He saw the stoppage at the gate, saw Tiffany red-faced and panting, and saw the elderly couple standing by the podium. He didn't need to ask questions. He made an assumption. "Tiffany, why is this flight not boarding?" Ridley barked, ignoring Otis completely. "We are on a slot time. Every minute we sit here is a $5,000 fine from the Port Authority." "It's him!" Tiffany cried, pointing at Otis like a child telling on a sibling. "This man is refusing to leave the first-class lane. He claims he owns the airline. He's harassing me, Gavin. He's threatening my job." Ridley turned to Otis. He looked at the tracksuit. He looked at the cane. He let out a sigh of profound irritation. "Sir," Ridley said, his voice dripping with condescension, "I don't know what kind of dementia episode you're having, but you cannot be here. You are disrupting a federal transportation hub." "Mr. Ridley, isn't it?" Otis asked politely. "That's Mr. Ridley, station manager to you," Gavin snapped. "Now, do you have a ticket that proves you belong in this lane? Yes or no?" "I have a boarding pass," Otis said, gesturing to the piece of paper Tiffany was still clutching. "But your agent was about to tear it up." Ridley snatched the paper from Tiffany. He glanced at it, saw the 1A designation, and sneered. "This is clearly a printing error or a forgery. System glitches happen. But let's use some common sense, shall we? People who fly first class on Regal Horizon look a certain way. They act a certain way. You are creating an eyesore." Martha flinched as if slapped. "We are paying customers," she whispered. "You are a liability," Ridley corrected her cold-heartedly. "Tiffany, cancel their reservation. Flag their names in the system as no-fly, behavioral risk, and get the Port Authority police down here. I want them trespassed from the terminal." Captain Sterling stepped forward again, looking desperate. "Gavin, listen to me. That is Otis Washington. He bought the company. Check your email. The memo came out this morning." Ridley rolled his eyes. "Captain, stick to flying the plane. I run the ground. I don't care if he claims to be the King of England. If he doesn't meet the dress code and conduct standards of the first-class cabin, I have the authority to deny boarding. And right now, looking like a vagrant, he's denied." Ridley turned back to Otis, crossing his arms. "You heard me. Get out, or go to jail." Otis looked at Ridley, He looked at Tiffany. He looked at the passengers watching him, waiting for him to be humiliated. He slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. It wasn't a smartphone. It was an old, rugged flip phone. "You have made your position very clear, Mr. Ridley," Otis said. "You prioritize appearance over humanity. You value a suit over a soul." "I value revenue," Ridley shot back, "and you don't look like revenue." "Very well," Otis said. He flipped the phone open. He dialed a single number. He didn't put it to his ear. He put it on speaker. The line rang once. Then a crisp, professional voice answered. "Otis, is everything all right? You should be in the air by now." The voice echoed through the silent gate area. Ridley froze. He recognized that voice. Everyone in the aviation industry recognized that voice. It was Preston Caldwell, the CEO of Regal Horizon, the man Gavin Ridley worshipped, the man whose picture was hanging in the staff break room. "Hello, Preston," Otis said into the phone. "No, I am not in the air. I am currently standing at Gate 42 at JFK. "Is there a mechanical issue?" Preston asked. "I'll call maintenance immediately." "No, the plane is fine," Otis said, his eyes locking onto Gavin Ridley's terrified face. "The issue is the staff. Specifically, a Ms. Tiffany Miller and a Mr. Gavin Ridley. They seem to be under the impression that I am a vagrant. They are currently threatening to have me arrested for trying to sit in the seat I own." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, a silence so cold it made the air conditioning feel warm. "They did what?" Preston's voice was dangerously quiet. "They have cancelled my ticket," Otis continued calmly. "They have insulted my wife, and Mr. Ridley here just informed me that I don't look like revenue." "Preston!" Ridley squeaked, leaning toward the phone, sweat erupting on his forehead. "Sir, Mr. Caldwell, I didn't know. He's wearing a tracksuit. He didn't show ID. I was just following the brand protection protocols." "Gavin?" Preston's voice barked. "Shut up." Otis smiled grimly. "Preston, I think we have a serious culture problem at this hub. I think the gold standard has rusted." "I am so sorry, Otis," Preston said, the panic evident in his voice. "I will handle this. Put them on the phone. I'll fire them right now." "No," Otis said firmly. "Not yet. That's too easy." Otis closed the phone. He looked at the terrified staff members. "You wanted to deny me boarding?" Otis asked softly. "You wanted to stop me from flying?" He turned to the jet bridge door. "Captain Sterling?" "Yes, Mr. Washington?" the pilot responded, standing at attention. "Kill the engines," Otis commanded. The crowd gasped. "Sir?" Sterling asked. "You heard me," Otis said, his voice booming like thunder. "Shut it down. This plane is not going to London. This plane is not going anywhere. If I am not good enough to fly on it, then nobody flies on it today." The announcement that the flight was grounded hit the gate area like a bomb. "You can't do that!" the woman in the fur coat screamed from the front of the line. "I have a gala in London tonight." "And I had a nice morning planned with my wife," Otis replied, turning to face the angry passengers. "But that was ruined because you all stood by and watched two bullies harass an old couple. You watched them mock our clothes. You watched them try to humiliate us. And you said nothing. In fact, some of you laughed." He scanned the faces of the wealthy passengers. They looked away, ashamed. "This airline runs on my money now," Otis declared. "And I will not subsidize a metal tube filled with people who think they are better than others. The flight is cancelled. Go to the service desk and rebook on a different airline. Regal Horizon is closed for the day at JFK." Chaos erupted. Passengers began shouting at Tiffany and Gavin. "Fix this!" a man in a suit yelled at Ridley. "Do you know how much I paid for this ticket? Get him on the plane." Ridley was hyperventilating. He turned to Otis, his arrogance completely replaced by groveling desperation. He dropped to his knees, literally to his knees, on the dirty airport carpet. "Mr. Washington, please," Ridley begged, clasping his hands together. "I beg you, don't ground the flight. It will cost the airline millions. The PR nightmare, the stock price." "You should have thought about the stock price before you judged a book by its cover," Otis said. Tiffany was standing against the wall, pale as a ghost. She looked at Martha. She realized that the only way out of this was through the woman she had insulted. "Mrs. Washington," Tiffany stammered, tears streaming down her face, fake tears crafted for sympathy. "I'm just a working girl. I'm just trying to pay my rent. Please, tell him it was a misunderstanding. I liked your dress. I really did. I was just stressed." Martha looked at the young woman. Martha was a kind soul, a woman who had spent 40 years volunteering at soup kitchens and raising foster children. But she also had a backbone of steel. "You didn't like my dress, child," Martha said softly, her voice carrying a sad dignity. "You looked at me like I was something you scraped off your shoe." Martha stepped forward, addressing the crowd and the weeping staff. "Do you know why we dress like this?" she asked. The crowd quieted down. 50 years ago, Martha began, Otis and I worked at this very airport. Not as passengers. Not as managers. She pointed to a janitor emptying a trash can nearby. "We were cleaners," she said. "Otis mopped the floors of Terminal 2. I cleaned the toilets in the International Arrivals Lounge. We wore uniforms that smelled like bleach. People walked past us every day. They stepped over our wet mops. They didn't see us. We were ghosts to them." Otis took her hand. "We saved every penny," he continued. "We invested. We scraped. We bought a small laundromat. Then two. Then a dry cleaner. Then a real estate complex. We built Washington Holdings from the dirt up. We wear these track suits," Martha said, "because they are comfortable, and because we promised ourselves that no matter how much money we made, we would never become the people in the suits who ignore the cleaners. We dress this way to remember who we are." She looked directly at Tiffany. "You looked at us and saw trash," Martha said. "But you were the one acting without class. Money buys the ticket, honey, but it doesn't buy manners." Tiffany sobbed, covering her face. Ridley, still on his knees, tried one last angle. "Mr. Washington, think of the crew, the pilots, the other flight attendants. If you cancel this flight, they don't get paid for the sector. You're hurting the working class." "Oh, don't you worry about them," Otis said icily. "Captain Sterling." "Yes, sir." "The flight crew is released for the day with full pay," Otis announced. "Go home to your families. Enjoy the holiday." "Thank you, sir," Sterling said, a rare smile breaking across his face. However, Otis continued, his gaze snapping back to Ridley and Tiffany. "There are 2 employees who will not be going home with pay." Otis pulled out his phone again. "Preston, are you still there?" "I'm here, Otis," the CEO's voice came through, sounding tense. "I want a full audit of the New York station," Otis commanded. "But right now, I want you to authorize a specialized termination, immediate effect, for cause, gross misconduct and discrimination." "No!" Tiffany screamed. "You can't. I have a union." "The union protects workers," Otis said. "It doesn't protect bigots who damage the company brand." "But wait," Otis added, holding up a hand. "Firing them is too simple. If I fire them, they just go to another airline and treat people the same way there. We need to teach a lesson." Otis looked at the janitor nearby, the man Martha had pointed out earlier. The man was leaning on his broom, watching the scene with wide eyes. "What is your name, son?" Otis asked the janitor. Marcus, sir," the janitor replied nervously. "Marcus," Otis said. "How long have you worked here?" 6 years, sir." "Hard work?" "Yes, sir. Back-breaking." Otis nodded. He turned to Gavin Ridley. "Mr. Ridley, you value the hierarchy so much? Fine. You are stripped of your title as station manager, effective immediately." Ridley slumped, defeated. "So I'm fired?" "No." Otis smiled dangerously. "I'm not firing you. I'm demoting you. If you want to keep your pension, and your benefits, and your salary, you will trade jobs with Marcus." The silence was deafening. "Excuse me?" Ridley whispered. "You heard me," Otis said. "Marcus, how would you like to be the acting station manager for the day? Sit in the air-conditioned office, drink coffee, supervise the team?" Marcus grinned, revealing a gold tooth. "I'd love that, sir." "And Mr. Ridley?" Otis pointed to the broom Marcus was holding. "There's a spill in the men's room near Gate 40. You better hurry. If the floor is sticky, I'm docking your pay." Ridley looked at the broom. He looked at the crowd, who were now snickering. He looked at Otis. "This is illegal," Ridley hissed. "It's a reassignment of duties," Otis said. "Quit if you want, but if you quit, I mark your file ineligible for rehire in the entire aviation industry. I have friends at Delta, United, and American. You'll never work in an airport again." Ridley slowly, shaking with rage and humiliation, stood up. He walked over to Marcus. He took the broom. The crowd erupted into applause. "And what about me?" Tiffany asked, her voice small. "Am I cleaning toilets too?" Otis looked at her. "No, Tiffany. You have a different destiny." Tiffany stood trembling under the harsh fluorescent lights of Gate 42. The silence that followed Otis's declaration was worse than the shouting. The crowd, the crew, and even Gavin Ridley, who was now awkwardly holding a push broom near the recycling bins, were all watching her. "I have a different destiny," Tiffany repeated, her voice barely a whisper. She tried to summon a shred of her former arrogance, smoothing her blazer, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Look, Mr. Washington, if you're not firing me, then I assume we can just move past this. I can issue you a voucher, a very generous travel voucher." Otis laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. "A voucher? You think this is about compensation? Tiffany, you don't seem to understand. I didn't buy this airline just to fly for free. I bought it to clean house, and when I looked at the books for the JFK hub, I noticed something interesting." He took a step closer to her. The crowd leaned in, sensing blood in the water. "We audited the upgrade list for the last 12 months, Otis said, his voice projecting clearly to the back of the line. "Regal Horizon has a strict policy. Complimentary first-class upgrades are based on mileage status. Computer automated. Fair." Tiffany swallowed hard. Beads of sweat began to ruin her perfect foundation. "Yes, of course. It's automated." "Is it?" Otis asked. He pulled a folded stack of papers from his back pocket. "Because according to this forensic accounting report, you have manually overridden the system 142 times in the last year." A gasp rippled through the crowd. 142 times, Otis repeated. "And do you know who got those seats? Was it loyal customers? Was it veterans? Was it the elderly?" He looked at Martha, who was standing tall and proud beside him. "No," Otis answered his own question. "The people sitting in seats 1A and 1B weren't high-mileage flyers. They were people who Venmo'd a personal account linked to a T. Miller Consulting." Tiffany's knees buckled. She grabbed the podium for support. "That's a lie. That's a tip jar. It's for concierge services." "It's embezzlement," Otis corrected her, his voice turning hard as granite. You've been selling $5,000 seats for $500 cash and pocketing the money. You've been stealing from the airline. And worse, you've been stealing from these people. Otis swept his hand toward the line of frustrated passengers. How many of you are gold or platinum members? Otis asked the crowd. About 20 hands went up. And how many of you have requested an upgrade on this route, only to be told the cabin was full? All 20 hands stayed up. Murmurs of anger started to swell. She told me I was number 10 on the wait list last week, a man shouted. But the cabin was half empty when we took off. She told me the system was down, a woman yelled. She's been selling your seats, Otis declared, pointing an accusing finger at Tiffany. She treats people like my wife and me like trash because we don't look like we have money to bribe her. She's not guarding the gate. She's running a toll booth. The atmosphere in the terminal shifted instantly from curiosity to mob fury. The passengers weren't just entertained anymore. They were victimized. They surged forward, pressing against the velvet ropes. You thief! I want my miles back. Lock her up! Tiffany backed away, terrified. Gavin! Gavin, help me! Tell them it's standard practice. You took a cut too! Gavin Ridley, who was aggressively sweeping an imaginary speck of dust near the window, froze. His head snapped up. Shut up, Tiffany. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, don't lie, Gavin, Tiffany shrieked, turning on her accomplice like a trapped rat. You signed off on the overrides. You said as long as the manifest balanced, you didn't care. You bought that boat with the kickbacks. Otis crossed his arms, a satisfied look on his face. And there it is, he murmured to Martha. The rats are eating each other. Otis turned back to the crowd. You see, this is why I am here. This culture of corruption ends today. But Tiffany, I'm not going to fire you. Firing you is an administrative action. He checked his watch. I think the authorities prefer the term indicted. As if on cue, the sliding glass doors of the terminal entrance burst open. But it wasn't passengers coming in. 4 officers from the Port Authority Police Department strode into the gate area. They were led by a tall, broad-shouldered detective with a buzz cut and a face that looked like it had been chiseled out of concrete. He wore a badge on his belt that glinted under the lights. This was Detective Graves. The crowd parted instantly to let them through. The air was thick with tension. Tiffany saw the police and let out a sigh of relief. In her twisted mind, the police were there to protect her. She was the white woman in the uniform. Surely they were here to remove the angry mob and the crazy old man. Officers! Thank God! Tiffany cried out, rushing toward Detective Graves. You have to help me. This mob is out of control, and this man... She pointed a shaking finger at Otis. He's impersonating the owner. He's inciting a riot. Arrest him. Detective Graves stopped. He looked down at Tiffany, his expression unreadable behind dark aviator sunglasses. He slowly removed them, revealing eyes that were cold and professional. You are Ms. Tiffany Miller? Graves asked, his voice a deep baritone. Yes, I am the lead agent, Tiffany said, straightening her spine. I want to press charges against him for harassment and disruption of commerce. Graves looked past her, toward Otis. He gave the old man a respectful nod. Mr. Washington, good to see you again, sir. Tiffany froze. You know him? Mr. Washington sits on the Civilian Oversight Board for the Port Authority, Graves said flatly. And his legal team sent over a very interesting dossier to the district attorney's office this morning. Graves reached behind his back. The sound of handcuffs unclipping from a leather belt was the loudest sound in the airport. Tiffany Miller, Graves said, reciting the words by rote. I have a warrant for your arrest. What? Tiffany gasped, stumbling back. No, you have the wrong person. He's the problem. The warrant is for grand larceny, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud, Graves continued, ignoring her protest. He grabbed her wrist, spinning her around with practiced efficiency. The metal cuffs clicked tight. 1, 2. "You're hurting me!" Tiffany screamed, thrashing against his grip. "This is police brutality. Gavin, tell them!" Gavin Ridley dropped his broom. He tried to slink away toward the jet bridge, hoping to disappear onto the empty plane. "Grab him too," Graves signaled to the other officers. 2 uniformed officers sprinted forward, tackling Gavin just as he reached the door. They wrestled him to the ground, his expensive suit tearing at the shoulder. "Get off me!" Gavin yelled, his face pressed against the carpet he had refused to clean. "Do you know who I am? I run this terminal." "You have the right to remain silent," an officer grunted, yanking Gavin's arms behind his back. "And looking at the evidence, I suggest you use it." Otis walked slowly toward the scene, his cane tapping rhythmically on the floor. He stopped in front of Tiffany, who was now weeping openly, her mascara running in black streaks down her face. She looked pathetic, a far cry from the tyrant who had sneered at his tracksuit 20 minutes ago. "You ruined my life!" Tiffany spat at him, venom mixed with tears. "You planned this. You came here just to trap me." "I came here to fly to London," Otis said softly. "I came here to take my wife on a vacation for our anniversary. All you had to do was scan a ticket. All you had to do was treat us with basic human decency." He leaned in, his voice dropping so only she and the detective could hear. "You trapped yourself, Tiffany. Arrogance is a trap. Greed is a trap. I just sprung it." Detective Graves looked at Otis. "We secured the server room downstairs, Mr. Washington. We have the logs. It looks like this goes deeper than just upgrades. They were faking cargo weights to smuggle unauthorized freight." Otis shook his head sadly. "Greed has no bottom. Take them away, detective." As the police marched Tiffany and Gavin through the terminal, the crowd didn't just clap, they cheered. It was a roar of vindication. People held up their phones, capturing the walk of shame. Tiffany tried to hide her face, but there was nowhere to hide. Her career was over. Her reputation was incinerated, but the drama wasn't done yet. As the police disappeared down the concourse, a hush fell over the gate. Otis turned back to the passengers. There were 200 people stranded, their flight cancelled, their day ruined. "Now," Otis said, his voice weary but strong, "I have made a mess of your travel plans. I grounded this plane to make a point, but innocent people shouldn't pay for the sins of the guilty." He turned to the service desk, where a young, terrified junior agent named Sarah was hiding behind a monitor. She looked like she was about to faint. "You there?" Otis said gently. "What is your name?" "Suis Sarah, sir," she squeaked. "Sarah, were you involved in Tiffany's scheme?" Sarah shook her head violently. "No, sir. I just started 2 weeks ago. She wouldn't even let me touch the upgrade computer. She called me. She said I was too stupid." Otis smiled warmly. "Well, Sarah, you are now the lead gate agent. Congratulations on your promotion." Sarah's jaw dropped. "I am?" "Yes," Otis said. "And your first job is to announce the compensation package for these passengers." Otis turned to the crowd. "I cannot get you to London on this specific plane right now, as the police need it as a crime scene," Otis announced. "However, I have just spoken to my operations team." He paused for effect. "A second aircraft, a new Airbus A350, is being towed to Gate 44 as we speak. It will be ready for boarding in 1 hour." A sigh of relief went through the crowd. "And," Otis raised a finger, "because Regal Horizon failed you today, everyone on this flight is being rebooked, but not in your original seats." He looked at the weary families, the students, the tired businessmen. "We are flying the new configuration. It is an all-business class layout. Every single person here is flying flatbed today. No extra charge. The cheer that went up was deafening. It was louder than a rock concert. People were high-fiving. The woman in the fur coat actually hugged a guy in a hoodie. Furthermore, Otis shouted over the noise, Sarah will be handing out vouchers for $5,000 to each passenger for future travel. Consider it an apology from the ownership. Martha squeezed Otis's hand. That's a lot of money, honey. It's cheaper than a bad reputation, Otis whispered back. But what about us? Martha asked, looking at their boarding passes. We still need to get to London. Otis smiled. He looked at the chaos of happy passengers, then at the empty jet bridge where Tiffany had stood guard like a gargoyle. We aren't taking the commercial flight, Martha, Otis said. I think we've had enough of airports for one day. He pulled out his phone again. Preston. Yes. Send the Gulfstream, the G650. Tell the pilot to meet us at the private tarmac, and tell him to have 2 glasses of champagne ready. My wife is thirsty. 6 months later, the atmosphere in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York was a stark contrast to the chaotic energy of JFK's Terminal 4. It was cold, sterile, and silent. The mahogany paneling absorbed sound, and the air smelled of floor wax and old paper. Tiffany Miller sat at the defense table. The navy blue Regal Horizon uniform, once her armor and symbol of status, was gone. She wore a generic grey blouse that hung loosely on her frame. Her hair, usually lacquered into a severe bun, was limp and pulled back with a cheap elastic band. She looked smaller, without the podium to hide behind, without the power to deny entry. She was just another defendant in a system that didn't care about curating the experience. Beside her, Gavin Ridley looked even worse. He had aged 10 years in 6 months. The arrogance that had allowed him to mock a billionaire was gone, replaced by a nervous tick in his left eye. The courtroom was packed. The story of the terminal tyrants had gone viral. Millions of views on YouTube, trending hashtags and op-eds in the New York Times about classism in the service industry. People wanted to see the end of the story. In the front row, sitting quietly, were Otis and Martha Washington. They weren't wearing tracksuits today. Otis wore a bespoke charcoal suit, and Martha looked elegant in emerald green silk. But when they looked at Tiffany, there was no gloating in their eyes, only pity. All rise, the bailiff bellowed. The Honourable Judge Harrison Thorne swept into the room. He was a man known for his zero-tolerance policy on white-collar crime. He adjusted his glasses and looked down at the 2 defendants. We are here for sentencing in the matter of United States versus Miller and Ridley, Judge Thorne said, his voice gravelly. The jury has found both defendants guilty on multiple counts of wire fraud, grand larceny, and conspiracy. Tiffany's lawyer, a court-appointed public defender named Mr. Evans, stood up. Your Honor, my client is a first-time offender. She got caught up in a culture of pressure. She asks for leniency. Probation would be sufficient. Judge Thorne looked at Tiffany. Ms. Miller, do you have anything to say before I pass sentence? Tiffany stood up. Her legs shook. She looked back at the gallery, her eyes landing on Otis. She wanted to scream at him, to blame him for ruining her life. But then she remembered the evidence presented during the trial, the spreadsheets showing $400,000 in stolen upgrades, the text messages between her and Gavin mocking disabled passengers, the security footage of her shredding tickets. Tiffany's voice cracked. I just wanted to keep the airline elite. I thought I was doing my job. Judge Thorne's expression hardened. No, Ms. Miller. You weren't doing your job. You were playing God. You used your position to belittle people you deemed unworthy, all while stealing from the very company that employed you. You judged people by their clothes, yet your own character was threadbare. The judge opened the file in front of him. This court needs to send a message. The service industry relies on trust. You broke that trust with malice. He banged his gavel. Gavin Ridley, for your role as the architect of this scheme, I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison. Gavin put his head on the table and sobbed. Tiffany Miller, the judge continued. Tiffany held her breath. For your role as the enforcer, and for the specific dehumanization of customers based on bias, I sentence you to 6 years in the Federal Correctional Institution at Danbury. 6 years. The words hung in the air like smoke. Furthermore, Judge Thorne added, you are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $200,000. You will not profit from this crime. As the bailiffs moved in to handcuff them, Otis stood up. He didn't interrupt, he just watched. Tiffany was led past him. She stopped for a brief second. I hope you're happy, she whispered, the bitterness still clinging to her. I'm not, Otis replied softly. I didn't want this. I just wanted to go to London. You chose this destination, Tiffany. Enjoy the flight. 3 years into her sentence, inmate number 749-22B, formerly known as Tiffany, pushed a mop bucket down the long, grey corridor of cell block C. The irony was not lost on her. Every day, she woke up at 5:00 a.m. She put on a uniform that fit poorly. She reported to a supervisor who screamed at her for missed spots. Her job was sanitation. She cleaned the communal showers. She scrubbed the toilets. She wiped down the tables in the cafeteria. One afternoon, while she was scrubbing a particularly stubborn stain on the floor, a new inmate walked by. The new girl bumped into Tiffany's wet floor sign, knocking it over. Hey, Tiffany snapped, her old instincts flaring up. Watch where you're going. Can't you see I'm working here? The new inmate, a tough woman named Big Red, who was in for armed robbery, stopped her. She looked down at Tiffany. Excuse me? Red asked, stepping onto the wet floor deliberately. Are you talking to me? Tiffany looked at the woman's size. She looked at the prison guards who were looking the other way. She remembered the lesson she had learned the hard way at Gate 42. Tiffany swallowed her pride. She picked up the sign. She lowered her head. No, Tiffany whispered. I'm sorry, I'll clean it up. That's right, Red sneered, walking away. Know your place, janitor. Tiffany watched her go, tears stinging her eyes. She dipped the mop back into the grey water. This was her reality now. She was the one being looked down on. She was the one being treated like furniture. The wheel of karma had turned, and it had crushed her. Meanwhile, at 35,000 feet, a Regal Horizon Airbus A350 was cruising toward Tokyo. In the front of the cabin, in seat 1A, sat Otis Washington. He was reading a newspaper. The headline discussed the success of the Washington Act, a new corporate policy adopted by major airlines requiring blind hiring practices and empathy training for all staff. A flight attendant approached him. She was young, smiling, and genuine. Mr. Washington, would you like a refill on your tea? Otis looked up. He didn't see a servant. He saw a person. That'll be lovely, my dear, Otis said. But please take a moment to sit. You've been on your feet for hours. Oh, I can't, sir. Policy, she smiled. I own the policy, Otis winked. Sit. Tell me about your day. As the plane soared above the clouds, leaving the turbulence far below, Otis proved that the true height of a person isn't measured by their bank account or their seat number. It is measured by how they treat the person bringing them their tea. Regal Horizon was no longer just an airline, it was a lesson. And while Tiffany scrubbed floors in Danbury, Otis Washington flew on, the gold standard finally restored, not with luxury, but with humanity. This story is a brutal reminder that the uniforms we wear and the titles we hold are temporary, but the way we treat people leaves a permanent mark. Tiffany and Gavin thought they were the gatekeepers of the elite, protected by the velvet rope of first class. They mistook net worth for self-worth and judged Otis and Simple Martha based on the fabric of their clothes rather than the content of their character. But karma is the ultimate equalizer. It doesn't care about your frequent flyer status or your job title. In the end, the very people Tiffany mocked were the ones who held her fate in their hands. She learned too late that in the game of life, you never know who you are actually talking to. Be kind to everyone, from the janitor to the CEO, because you never know when the roles might reverse. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice served, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What would you have done if you were Otis? Would you have forgiven her, or did she get exactly what she deserved? Let me know in the comments below. Type karma if you believe what goes around comes around. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and stay humble.